Hey guys, Sean from Bantam Overland. On today's video, we're doing a much needed upgrade to our 21 Jeep Wrangler. What are we doing, you ask? We're doing Alpine's i509-WRA-JL. The i509-WRA-JL comes with everything that you see here on our table, including the new trim bezel, the main unit, the display, the factory camera integration unit, the speaker to retain any external commands, the iData-Link Maestro, which will come flash specifically for your vehicle, and it even comes with a brand new media center that comes with 2 USB-As, HDMI, and an auxiliary. All the parts are included to complete your install in its entirety. If you have the premium Alpine system, there is one other part you're going to need to complete the install, and I'm going to show you that a little later in the video. So let's go over some of the features for the i509-WRA in our JL Wrangler. So this is specifically made for the 2018.5 to 2023 Jeep Wrangler, as well as the 2020 to 2023 Jeep Gladiator. A huge benefit to the i509-WRA-JL is that this is wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Even up through 23, you still have to plug in to your media center to allow you to use either Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. You'll notice is a 9-inch capacitive touchscreen. The screen is splash-proof and dust-proof with an IP53 rating. You'll get Bluetooth calling and Bluetooth audio playback. It's wired and wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. It's got HD radio built in, so you'll get some extra radio stations, as well as it has Tidal high-res music integration. The unit also works with SiriusXM. All you're going to need is to purchase the SiriusXM tuner. So some of the nitty-gritty details on the 509 is it's a 50x4 internal amplifier, as well as it has 3 sets of RCA pre-outs that are 4 volts. So you have a front, a rear, and a subwoofer pre-out. And as I said earlier, you have 2 USB inputs, a HDMI, as well as an auxiliary 3.5 millimeter input. So if you're planning to install this radio into a Wrangler or a Gladiator with the OEM premium system, i.e. the Alpine factory system, you're going to need to purchase the KCX F200 INT to integrate into that factory system. This is a necessary piece. It will not play without having this installed. Before you finalize your purchase, confirm that you have the factory Alpine system. You'll know that by you'll have a subwoofer either in the passenger rear storage area of a JL or behind the passenger seat in a Gladiator. So just confirm that. If you have either of those options, make sure you select this at checkout. So let's go over some of the tools that are going to be necessary to complete our installation. First, we're going to need some kind of screw gun or handheld Phillips head screwdriver, some wire ties, a pair of cutters to cut those wire ties, a panel removal tool, as well as a socket wrench with a 7mm, an 8mm, and a 10mm socket, and also a T25 Torx. So now that we've gone over everything that's included in the i509-WRA-JL bundle, let's go ahead and head to the Jeep, get it disassembled, and we can start our installation. So before we begin disassembly and then the installation, let's talk about where we need to be and what we need to actually disassemble. So first, we're going to need to take off the lower knee bolster here. We'll actually remove everything from the center console, from the radio, the start stop and heater control switch, as well as the power window switch. We'll need to remove the A-pillar grab handle as well as the trim piece here. Now the reason we're removing that is to run our Bluetooth mic as well as our GPS antenna. So with that being said, let's get right into the disassembly portion. I'm going to start off by removing the lower knee bolster, and then we'll move to the center section here. So let's get that started. So first step in disassembly, we're going to actually remove the lower knee bolster. There are 6 plastic clips that kind of hold it into place. You just need to kind of get under there and pry away, releasing those clips. Do that on both sides. So once you get that off, you can go ahead and set that in a safe place. So now the knee bolster's out of the way, we can go ahead and move to the radio area and start that disassembly. So now we're going to move on to the center of the dash area, starting with our heater controls and our start stop button. Grab your panel popper, gently get it in between the grab handle and just slightly pull out. Once you're started, you can just kind of continue to release it. We're going to have 2 plugs, one at the heater controls, unplug it, and then one at the start stop switch. Also unplug that, set that somewhere out of the way but safe. So from there we have 2 Phillips head screws here we need to remove, and 1 here for the window switch. So let's get those out. And we'll grab this one here. So from there, the trim around the radio screen, just pull that out. Again, it just will release off of plastic clips. Set that out of the way. So now we have 4 screws holding in our screen all the way around. Let's go ahead and get those out. And before you take out the last one, just hold on to the screen just in case. And then we're going to pull that out of the dash. And then we have a bunch of plugs that we're going to need to unplug. So just start one by one, getting each one unplugged. And we have our USB here. And then lastly, we have our main power connector. Push in and up, and then that will release. So from there, now we have our main display screen out. We need to remove our window switch and auxiliary switch bezel. So once that screw is out, you can just gently pry out on it, and then just release all of the clips. And then we also have a whole bunch of plugs here as well. So just go ahead and remove each one. The window switch, push up on this little red tab. We have our power outlet. Plug there. Plug for our auxiliary switches. And then we have our 2 USB plugs. Again, just pushing in and releasing, pushing in and releasing. So there's one thing we will actually need to do to this to complete the install. We'll be removing this factory media hub and reinstalling the new Alpine media hub. I'll show you how to do that. Now that we have everything out of our center console, we can turn our attention to our A-pillar and our trim at the top. So for this, you're going to grab your panel removal tool and just pop this up. Same thing on the lower section, pop that down. We also are going to need to remove our tweeter speaker grill. So again, with your panel removal tool, just pop it up. and remove that. So next we'll grab our 10mm on our socket or our impact gun. Remove that first 10mm bolt. Same thing on the bottom. Move that second bolt. Then from there we can just gently maneuver it out and remove it all together. So from there we need to remove 4 T25 Torx from this upper trim. So let's grab our T25. Swap out our Phillips head and our 10mm. And go ahead and remove those. There's one right here. One right here. And then 2 on the top side. So once all 4 of those are out, you can gently pull this one off. And notice that there is a locator pin on the front side that will go back in that hole there. So the last thing we need to do to have our vehicle fully disassembled to install our new radio, we're actually going to remove the glove box. Super simple process, just drop it down, release the soft close latch, push up on the retainer, and pull and remove. So now that our Jeep is completely disassembled, we can move back over to the table and get our radio prepped for installation. So now that we have our Jeep all disassembled and ready to begin our installation, there are some things we need to do prior to that. So we need to actually mount our 9-inch capacitive touchscreen into our bracket, as well as our main unit into its bracket. So first of all, let's move this out of the way. We're gonna start with our bracket for our main unit. Now this will go underneath the steering column, and I'll show you exactly where that goes once we get to it. So first things first, we want to line this up with the pre-threaded holes into the side here. Now that's on both sides. So let's go ahead and grab 2 of our screws, kind of get them started in there. And get one screwed in, grab another one. So now that we have our one side screwed in, this is for the SiriusXM tuner if you chose it at checkout. And then we have this bracket. So this bracket is if you have the OEM power outlet in the rear of the center console, which we do on ours. Now we do not have the heated seat option, which would then mount underneath here. So let's go ahead and get this on. So for this, we're going to choose the longer bolts to get it in there. Go ahead and get them both started, and we can get those screwed in. So now we have our main unit all mounted, and then later in the video I'll show you how to actually mount your power outlet onto the top. So now we can move on to installing our 9-inch display screen. So gently flip it over. You're going to grab your metal bracket. Now you want to make sure that you put it in the correct orientation. So take that and then just flip that over. Grab 4 more of your screws And then go ahead and just screw in each one. Don't over tighten it because you could strip them out. Now we have all 4 screws installed. We can actually just set this to the side for later when we install it. So next we'll have our main harness here with our iData-Link Maestro. Now you'll just have to plug in 4 plugs. They're color coded to exactly where they need to go. Green will go to green, black to black, and then 1 set on the other side. You also want to make sure that anything that's wire tied, we go ahead and get all the wire ties off for when we run everything through the vehicle. So now that we've prepped everything, we're pretty much ready to go in and start getting the installation done. So now that we have our radio prepped, we can actually go and begin to remove our power outlet inverter. I did remove the shroud around the steering wheel to give us a little more room for the video. You don't need to remove this. So first things first, we have 2 10mm bolts that we need to remove, and then we have 2 8mm bolts down low. So let's start with our 10s, get them off. Let's get our second one off. Now we have the 2 8mm bolts that are down low. Grab our gun. Both of those are out. This will actually become loose. So now we just need to be able to turn it to unplug the connector. So we have 1 set of wires attached. We just want to get that off of our bracket. There we go. Okay. Once you've removed that, you can actually remove the plug in the inverter, pressing down and pulling out. And then we'll actually remove the whole inverter from the truck. Now previously, when we prepped our head unit to go in, we put the bracket on to put this on. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to have to remove the 3 10mm bolts that are here, and then we're going to take the mounting clips and put them on our unit and then mount that back down. So let's go ahead and get this removed. That's going to be a 10mm. So what we're going to do is grab our 10mm, take off the 3 bolts. Once we have removed our bolts, we can actually take our assembly, move it down, and then we need to use these metal fasteners, and we can slide them back on. Now we have our power inverter module out. Now depending on your year is how you will actually mount that to the top. Some may mount with the rear 2 and the front. In our case, ours kind of mounts like that. So we're going to use both of these. So we'll just slide our mounts in. Get them kind of lined up. Get our unit lined up on there. Start both of our bolts in there. There we go. And go ahead and bolt them both down. So now our module is bolted to our unit itself. So now we can set that to the side. So now to actually slide our unit inside the cavity of the dash here, we need to remove the 2 braces just to get it in. So that'll be 2 10mm bolts down low, 2 8mm bolts up high, and the 10mm bolt on the driver's side is underneath the metal brace here. So let's go ahead and grab our 10mm, get these bolts out. Switch over to our 8mm. Making sure we hold on to that. And then the other side. So now that everything's out of the way, we can actually mount our main unit back in here. We have plenty of room to get everything run and get everything wired. So let's go ahead, grab our main unit. Get that slid in. Now, the side that you're sliding in, you'll be seeing all the plugs on the back of the unit, so it's actually kind of backwards. So we're just gonna go ahead, get it up over, and then right into place. It'll look just like that. So before you actually physically mount this in, you want to make sure if you have the power inverter or the heated seats that you get both of those plugged in first. So I'm going to go ahead, plug in our power inverter module, and then we will get our head unit brain actually mounted. Okay, so now we got that plugged back in. We can kind of get everything lined up. So you can see our 2 holes here, and then we have our 2 up top. So we want to make sure we grab the correct screws. So the coarse thread ones will go down low. So get that started by hand, as well as the other one. And the fine thread bolts will go up high. So get those started. So I'm not going to finish tightening them down until we have everything run and get everything kind of in its place of where it's supposed to be. So for that, next we're going to go ahead and run our Bluetooth mic and our GPS antenna. So that'll run, GPS antenna will sit up top, it'll run down here, Bluetooth will sit somewhere behind the rear view mirror, and will run up and down along as well. They'll both want to end up right in this general area. So let's go ahead, get the Bluetooth and the GPS run now. So next thing we need to do is actually run our GPS and our Bluetooth microphone. I prefer to have my microphone up a little bit high. You can place it wherever you feel comfortable, if that's on the center console, wherever you would like. But for me, I like it up high. So we'll make sure we remove the sticky side of the double-sided tape. So we'll remove that, get it mounted just to the left. Go ahead and get it untangled and kind of get it over to here. So once you stick it, just get your wire underneath the plastic trim here and into this area, and just make sure it's as pretty as you can make it. You don't want the wire coming down while you're driving, so just make sure that it's all in there and secure. So once you're here, next we can go ahead and grab our GPS antenna. Again, remove the covering of the tape. Now that's actually going to sit just behind our head on the left-hand side. So once you're there, go ahead and stick it. And we're going to start running the wire behind the plastic here. And then we'll use the 3 little clips that come in the kit to secure the wire to the top of the A-pillar or the door frame. And then we'll finish running it down. So from here, you can just gently pull back on the plastic to hide the wire. And we're there. So then we'll grab the little plastic clips. So stick them every so often just to get our wires there. So now we're here. We have both of our wires that we can start running down. Now here's where you're going to want to go ahead and grab your wire ties. Grab a couple of them, secure them to the harness here, but making sure we stay out of the way of where the bolts will secure that A-pillar on there. So let's go grab some wire ties, get that wire tied, and then finish running it down towards the brain of the unit. So now we have our wire ties. Go ahead and get one in there. And you want to give yourself a little bit of slack just to make sure. Grab another one, slide it in behind. We can go behind the factory plug, and then I think one last one down here. So let's just make sure we're behind the plug. There we go. So just go ahead and clip off the ends. And just make sure we're not going to cut ourselves. So from there, we're going to run it behind this panel. If you choose to pull this panel off, you can absolutely just grab your panel removal tool, stick it in behind there, and just gently pop it out. It's not 100% necessary, but it will make your job a little bit easier. So now from here, we're just going to tuck it behind this top panel, kind of let it come down. We can pop off our cover here, wrap it around, and now we're in this general area. Now we're not going to plug it in anything just yet. And now we can begin to go ahead and run all of our wires that we need to run for the display to the main unit, and we'll do that next. So now we need to start running some cables to different areas of the Jeep. We'll have some going towards the passenger side glove box area, and the rest will go over underneath. So first I'm going to start with running my display cable. So you'll notice that one side says head unit side, the other says the display side. So obviously we're going to want to have that up here. So we're going to just slide the side that says head unit side down the side of the dash, getting it about there. Next we're going to grab our cable. Now that will go between the display and the head unit. So same thing, it'll come down. We'll kind of keep that at about the same length. Next thing we want to begin to run is our Maestro harness. So starting at the top, you can go ahead and get the main unit plugged in. So you just want to make sure that they line up correctly. Notice that there are some larger pins and some smaller pins. Again, smaller, larger. So go ahead and slide that in and then lock it down. So that is connected. So from there, we have to run all of this down and over towards the driver's side. So we'll, again, just slide all that stuff down through the dash and then gently route it down through. So now we have our Maestro. We have some of our factory cables here. So now we need to plug in some of our other stuff here. So the first thing we're going to want to plug in is our factory FM antenna. That'll go into the larger white. If you decided to add the Sirius XM add-on tuner, that one will plug into the teal color. Make sure that's plugged in. So from there, we can go ahead and grab our factory camera interface and the plug. So get that plugged in. Now there'll be two plugs on here that says camera power and accessory can. So we're going to plug both of those in, our power and our can. And then we have our rear view camera input. We can go ahead and plug in the provided cable. And then we're going to go ahead and just plug that into the connector. So now that we're connected to the head unit, we're going to want to connect to the red, and it's a bright red. There, same as there. Get that plugged in. Now that can actually get slid in and set aside for now. So now we have two things that we need to run over towards the passenger side. The first thing is the CAN connections, and then we'll have to actually mount the speaker and run that back up. So to run the CAN connections, just gently in between here, you'll see an area that it'll run. And then you can just reach up in your glove box area here. And pull that down. Then as far as the speaker, it's also got double-sided tape on it. Go ahead and get the wire tie off. Now you can stick that kind of anywhere you would like. It just needs to be out of the way. Once that's stuck, just follow the same way you dropped the CAN cables down in to bring this back up, and this will plug directly into the Maestro adapter. So once you get it up there, grab your Maestro adapter and plug it right into the corresponding 2-pin next to the black. So we have our speaker placed right here, and then the cable is run up to the dash. So next we need to plug in our CAN connection. This is our CAN junction. So if you have any that are open, you can just go ahead and plug it directly in. If there are none that are open, they give you a Y connector to unplug one, plug ours in, and then plug the one that you unplugged directly back in. So it's very simple. You just line it up, push it in, and then you'll wire tie and clean up any extra wire before you move on. So now we have one last cable that we need to run up. That's going to be our USB power adapter. So what this will actually do is we will plug it into the black factory USB that will allow us to continue powering our rear USB or our USB inside the center console as power only. So it will no longer allow you to plug in and use it on the head unit. It will be only power. So for that, go ahead, grab your extension here, plug it in. We're going to run this side up. So just exactly how we ran the other things. Run that up, and then you'll see one that says auxiliary power. Go ahead, plug that in. So now that basically everything is run, we can go ahead and do a little cleanup, kind of keep stuff looking semi-organized. So for that, again, you can do that any way you so choose. I'm gonna just kind of get everything together. So I can wire tie it as one. So get everything kind of looped in here. Grab a wire tie. Cut off the extra. I want to kind of keep this looking semi-nice. There we go. Go ahead and wire tie that. And then cut that. So from there, you can kind of get everything mounted in the dash. You want to make sure that you have these three harnesses out to be plugged into. This will go to the display, this will go to the display, and then this will plug it to the buttons of the trim bezel. So let's go ahead, grab our display, get everything mounted, and get our display screwed back in, and then we can continue with running all of our wires to our head unit. So now we have our display. You'll notice the two plugs that plug into the back. So the first one, we'll grab this, push it in, confirm that we have the one that says display side. Get that plugged in. Now this one that says button, we want to leave out and behind. So we can go ahead and slide our display into place. It lines up perfectly. Grab your screws. And then you can begin mounting your display in. So now our display is mounted. We can go ahead and finish running the rest of our wiring over to our main part of our head unit, and we'll do that next. So before we finish running our cabling through the dash and to our head unit, I want to go over how to connect the KCX F200 INT. Now this again is necessary if you have the factory Alpine system. So the best way to do this and how they suggest to do it is you're going to place the box inside the glove box, mount it somewhere securely, run the cabling through the glove box and then out towards here. Now you're going to unplug the two connectors, and you'll have an input and an output. You'll only be able to go one way, so you won't have to worry about, doing it wrong. So the white will go towards the head unit, the black will go towards the actual vehicle or the harness that goes to the factory vehicle, and it will look like that. But since we already have aftermarket amplifiers in this vehicle, we will not be using that in this case. So we'll get everything plugged back in. So we have 3 different harnesses that we need to continue through the dash and then to our head unit area. So easiest way is just kind of slide it all the way through. Again, with the second harness. And then slide it through. And then we have the last harness. Now this one's going to be the toughest of all of them because they're kind of, you know, the wires are kind of everywhere. So just take your time. Just feed it in. And just work to get everything out on the other side. And one of the most important things is the antennas for both FM and Sirius XM satellite radio. So now we have everything in the general area. Make sure that's all good. So from here, we're going to go ahead and make our connection to our black USB. So just plug it in and clip. Now this will remain in here, and again, that is mainly to power your center console or rear console USBs for power only. So from there we can actually move down and make all of our connections and make sure that we plug everything in, and we can then take our USBs that are attached to our head unit and run them back up for when we install our new media center. So let's get down here, get that all connected, and I'll show you how to do that now. So now we have everything down underneath the dash and at our head unit. So now we can begin to start plugging in stuff. Don't forget that you have your GPS and your Bluetooth microphone here in the driver's side kick panel that needs to be run up there as well. And we also have our 2 USBs that are going to need to be run towards the center of the dash for our new media center. From here, we're going to go ahead and just start plugging in wires. So first is our display, which we'll plug in there. Next, we'll plug in our main power harness. There. And then plug in our camera connections. From there, we'll go ahead and plug in our AM/FM antenna. We are not doing a satellite radio, so we won't need to do anything with that. Then next, we will plug in our other 2 connections. One there, one next to the power harness. So those are nice and plugged in. So next we have our RCA pigtail with our front, rear, and subwoofer RCAs. Go ahead and get that plugged in. So now that's plugged in. So then from there, we can finish running our GPS and our Bluetooth mics. So coming up from the driver's kick panel, you're just going to feed them right beside and pull them all the way through. Now your Bluetooth mic, depending on where you put it, will depend on how much length of wire you have, but you want to make sure you keep all of it out of the way of your brake pedal or your clutch pedal. So from there, our GPS antenna will plug right over here. So we'll go up, get that plugged in, and then our Bluetooth mic will actually plug into our harness here where it says mic in. So we'll actually go ahead and go up with that GPS antenna. So there'll be a plug that says mic in. Go ahead and get that plugged in. So like I said, you'll have some extra cabling for both of those. Let's get this out of the way quick. So now we need to run our 2 USBs from the head unit into the center console. So for that, exactly the same as running them this way. You're just going to run them backwards and run them into the center console. Just pull it out. So there's the first one. And there's the second one. So now before we clean this mess up, just want to go over, show you how to install your new Alpine Media Center in your center console. Super easy to do. Just push in a couple clips, pop it out, pop this one back in. Now the other side of that is, from there we'll need to run the HDMI from the center console back over and just plug it in. So that's why we're kind of waiting to clean everything up here. So let's go ahead, get that done, show you how to install that, run that HDMI cable to the head unit, and we'll do that next. So our center console, here's our factory media hub. Just spin it around. There's 4 small locking tabs that actually hold that into place. Easiest thing to do with your panel popper, just push the 2 on the top down, then push the 2 on the bottom. Once you feel it release, it will just slide forward. It'll just slide forward and slide out. The new media center should take the wires, slide everything through. Now making sure you have your media correctly so everything opens, and then just push it in till it locks. So it mounts the exact same way as the factory does. So that way you don't have to cut anything, modify anything in the Jeep at all. Just plug it right in. So from there, we can go ahead and run our HDMI cable. Again, it's going to go the exact same way as it did for all of our other cabling. So that will end up down there. As far as the USBs and the auxiliary, they are labeled USB 1, USB 2, the 1/8 inch mini jack, and the HDMI. So we're going to grab our 2 USBs that we ran up through, plug our Apple CarPlay or our black USB into USB number 1, plug our charge USB into number 2, and I'm not going to use a 3.5mm jack, so I'm not going to run that. but we'll just keep it out just to be safe. So from there we can go ahead and grab our HDMI and just slightly pull it forward and place our power window switch bezel in the general area, so we can go ahead and plug in our HDMI, get everything cleaned up here, and then start putting everything back together. So now back down at the head unit. So we're gonna go ahead and grab our HDMI cable. Now there's an in and an out. We're gonna be plugging it into the in side of the unit. So just line that up and get that plugged in, making sure you have it the right way. So there we go. So now I'm plugged in. So now we can kind of get everything set and get some of our wires cleaned up. So this is a personal preference, however you want to do it. I would just remember to keep everything out of the way, because you're going to have some braces to put back in here once everything is tightened back down. So just keep that in mind while you're cleaning up all your wires. So let's go ahead and get these wires cleaned up. Again, just want to make sure you keep in mind what's going to be going in afterwards, which are some braces. Just keeping everything neat and out of the way. So that was my GPS antenna and my Bluetooth microphone. So I have lots of extra Bluetooth mic. So I'm just gonna rewrap that back up. Kind of how it came. There we go. I'll get that wire tied in this general area. So that stays up and doesn't fall out onto the floor. So now we got that. So now we have this bunch of wires that is run through. So we can zip tie pretty much all of this stuff up and out of the way. There we go. We'll leave access to our remote wire, which we're gonna potentially use with aftermarket amplifiers. There we go. Kind of get this back down here. Get that back up. Grab a wire tie and wire tie that up and clean that. So again, just remember, we have a brace that goes here, one that goes here on the other side. So just again, keep that in mind while you're cleaning up all of your wires. So now that we got all of our wires cleaned up, we can move and start putting everything away behind our window switch and getting the rest of the Jeep put back together. So let's go ahead and get everything in the center of our dash put back together and screwed back in. So first I'm gonna go ahead and grab all the stuff near the media center. Make sure we get that nice and neatly wire tied together. Keep it in a nice format here. One or two wire ties should do the trick. So got two on there. Everything's neatly run. So now I can go ahead and grab all of my connectors here Get our heater control plug out of the way. So first go with our power plug. Get that plugged in. Locker plug. We will not be using the gray 8-pin. That was to our factory media center. Grab our black plug there. And then plug in our window switch. And make sure you push that down so it stays locked. Just make sure, and again, you want to make sure that this 10-pin plug is up top. That will actually plug into your climate controls. So you just want to kind of keep this factory gray plug out of the way. Slide it back into position. And now we need to just hide all this extra wire back there. And from there, just kind of push it in to position. We have one Phillips head screw to hold that in. Go ahead and now that's in there. So next we want to go ahead and grab our heater controls and our start stop switch. Again, plugging that in, and then plugging our start stop button in. So just slide it in, lock it in tight. Last thing we need to do is plug in our display side plug. That will plug directly into the new trim bezel, and then we will just line it up and push it on. So now that has a complete and finished look. So let's go back down to the bottom here. We'll get our two metal braces back on, get all that stuff bolted back together, and then we can go ahead and put in our top trim and our handle and A-pillar trim back in, put in our tweeter speaker grill cover back on, and then we can start testing the radio. So let's go ahead and finish up and tighten all the bolts, put our braces back in, get everything tightened back up. So first I'm going to want to tighten up the two bolts holding in the head unit, the bottom ones, those are 8 mils. So let's go ahead and get those tightened. So now with that tightened, we can go ahead and tighten up the two top ones, 10 mil, just nice little open-ended wrench. So that one's tight. And that one's tight. So next we're going to go ahead and put in the brace on the driver's side. So they will be two different shapes. So this is your driver's side. This is your passenger side. You'll notice there's a little clip here. So that will kind of remind you that it's the passenger side. So first we will slide this up in. Grab our 10 mil from the bottom. Get that started there so it stays. And then we can grab one of our 8mm bolts. And now that's locked in. Switch over the 10mm and tighten this one up. Now we can move over to the passenger side. The little protrusion I was talking about just slides into there. Go ahead and get that started. So it stays. Then grab our 8mm. There we go. So that's tightened up. Go ahead and tighten up our 10mm. There we go, perfect. So now from there, if you're not using any aftermarket amplifiers, you can go ahead and either unplug this or just tie it up, use a wire tie, keep it up and out of the way for future use. If not, I'm going to show you how to plug in a 6-channel set of RCAs and the remote line into this part of your head unit. So if you're planning to use aftermarket amplifiers on your i509-WRA-JL, I'll show you how to hook those up now. Nice thing is that from Alpine, it comes with a female bullet connector on there. So you can see our remote wire is plugged in with a male bullet connector. So we can go ahead and just, keep that plugged in. They provide you with 3 RCA pre-outs that are all 4 volts each. So we have our subwoofer pre-out, we have our rear audio pre-out, as well as our front audio pre-out. So you plug those in depending on what you're using. If you're only using front and sub, or if you're only going to use subwoofer, you plug that in accordingly. So other than that, we're basically done here. We're going to finish putting it back together, and then we'll get to the A-pillar and the top trim, get those put back on, and then we'll give it a test, see how it sounds. So let's go ahead, get our under dash panel back on. If you remove the 2 screws on the steering wheel surround, go ahead and get those in first. And then we're just going to go ahead and line up the bottom and just push until it clicks. So now that that's back on, we're going to go ahead and move to our A-pillar and our top trim, get those back in, and then we'll have one last thing to do, which is replace the glove box. So let's go ahead, get our upper and our A-pillar trim back on, as well as our front left speaker. So again, there's a little post that just needs to get lined up. There we go. So now that's in. So grabbing our A-pillar, just sliding it in, and then it should all meet. And then our speaker grill will just come in, snap right down. So now we have 2 10mm bolts we need to put back in here. So, and then you can close that up. Grab the second 10mm bolt. Then close that up. Now we can switch back over to our T25. And then 2 up top. And the final one. So now we have that. Last thing we need to do before we test it is put in the glove box. All we're going to do is catch the hooks on the bottom of the glove box like that. Lift up slowly. We want to reinstall the soft close latch and then push close. Make sure your soft close latch works by opening it. It should come down slowly and not slam down. So now we're finished with our installation. We need to test it. As a food for thought, you're going to have 2 screws left over. Those were the 2 screws that held in the trim piece around the factory screen. The 2 that went right around here. Just put them in a little bag. Keep them somewhere safe with the factory head unit. So now let's take a moment, make sure, get cleaned up, double check everything, make sure all the bolts are in, all the screws are tight, make sure there's no wires hanging, anything like that, and then we can turn it on, see how she works. So now the installation of our Alpine i509-WRA-JL is complete. But there's one more thing we have to do, and it's probably the most satisfying part of the entire process. Removing the film. So now that that's out of the way, we can actually turn it on and give it a try. I must say that Alpine has done a spectacular job of matching the aluminum trim in the vehicle. Looks very, very beautiful in the dash. It doesn't come out too far. It just kind of fills out the rest of this whole dash. With that being said, let's turn it on. So the radio turned on. So let's go through some of the features that you'll see when you initially turn it on. We have our AM/FM radio. We have our USB 1 and our USB 2, which is located in our new media hub. We have our factory media. We have HDMI, Sirius XM, and auxiliary. Your HDMI and your auxiliary are also located in your new media hub. We have Bluetooth audio, and if we hit the little arrow over, we come and we have our title app. If we go back, we have a vehicle info icon. Tap that. You'll be able to see your air pressures, if your doors are open or closed. You have your gauges. So for here, you have your intake temperature, your fuel percentage, and if you tap your climate, you can actually adjust your climate controls right from here. So let's see, yep, it changes when I change here, or I can turn it here. So either way, I can do that. I can turn everything on. Go back out. So let's go in and I'm going to show you how to link your phone to the new unit. So we need to pull up our e-brake. If it doesn't do it the first time, put it back down, pull your e-brake back up, tap setup. So right now we're in the system. We need to go to device and device list. So right now there's nothing on there, obviously. Tap add new device. And then you're going to grab your phone and go to your Bluetooth menu. So it found my iPhone. So I'm going to tap it. So make sure that the code is the same. It is pair. Going to allow my contacts to sync. Now this device supports Apple CarPlay. Would you like to start it? Yes. And Wi-Fi mode will be changed. Yes. And we want to confirm on our phone to connect to CarPlay. So now it has connected to CarPlay. We have the ability to do Waze, satellite radio from our phone if we have the app. We can make phone calls, whatever we need to do. So let's actually go in and go into Spotify. There it is. So let's go in, find some music to play, turn it up. Now, one thing I'm noticing is I don't have any subwoofer. It's because I didn't turn it on yet. So let's go in, go into our home screen. Double check everything. So all of our balance and fade is in the center, but this is also where you're going to turn your subwoofer on and off. So we can tap that on, go back out. So now you have the ability to turn your subwoofer up and down from 0 to 15. So I'm going to start at about 10, see how she sounds. There's the subwoofer. She sounds pretty good. So let's go over this screen. Again, we have our balance and fader where we can check all of our speakers or put it right to center. Again, if we don't have a subwoofer, we can shut that off. We do have subwoofer, so we're going to leave that on. Moving to the EQ setting. So you have a couple of different options of what to do here. So you have a basic EQ where you can just kind of preset, so you can put it on pop or jazz or country. Totally up to you. As far as crossovers, so everybody's going to be a little bit different when they set these up. You know, your fronts, I'm going to leave it about 100 hertz. Low pass, turn it up to 20 kilohertz. Rear, since those are 6x9s in this Jeep, I'm going to leave them at 80 hertz and put the rear low pass filter all the way up to 20,000 kilohertz. And our subwoofer is at 80 hertz, which is perfect. We just want sub bass there. Next thing is time correction. Time correction is where you can actually slow down where the speakers are going to play by the time they hit your ears. So you can see here that Alpine has already preset this unit specifically for the JL. Now, the only thing you would really have to do from here is if you decide to either add the subwoofer or you have the factory subwoofer in the passenger side, you would just want to take that measurement. Now, you can do that in inches or milliseconds or centimeters. I would do it in inches personally. You would just want to measure from where your head is at the headrest back to the factory subwoofer or the aftermarket subwoofer, and then enter that information here by just tapping or holding up and down arrow keys. Once you have everything set, the music will sound and hit your ears at the exact same time, making it a more pleasurable listening experience. So getting out of there, we can go back. So we can go into our backup camera, make sure our backup camera works. So you can do it one of two ways. You can hit it at any time, or when you put it in reverse, if you want to do it at any time, you just tap this button here. Our backup camera comes on. If you decide to add the front camera at some point later down the road, you'll plug it in down underneath your steering column, and that will give you the option to go rear or front. And then you'll just tap your front camera, that'll come on. So from there, we have our volume up and down here, as well as on our steering wheel. We have our track up and our track down. Again, we also have track up and down on our steering wheel on the left-hand side. Navigation we do not have on this unit, so if we hit that, just going to flip right to our Apple CarPlay and not to like a stick nav or anything like that. So in our last button down here is actually our source button. So you can just tap that to go through your different sources, AM, FM, auxiliary, HDMI, another auxiliary, Bluetooth audio, and then back to our Apple CarPlay. Overall, the Alpine i509-WRA-JL Looks absolutely gorgeous in the dash. Its functionality is absolutely perfect. Them giving you a new media hub, so you have that HDMI and those two USB-As right at your fingertips, is fantastic. The fact that the screen is customizable makes it all that much more worth it. I actually took it and went to red to kind of match the dash. Having the ability to no longer have to have your phone plugged in into the dash by using wireless Apple CarPlay or wireless Android Auto is a game changer for this Jeep. That was one of the things I always disliked about this Jeep, is always having to remember your cord or plug it in, or if you were on a phone call and you unplugged it, you had to switch over. It was a total pain. Wireless Android and Apple CarPlay, awesome. So if you have any questions or are looking to purchase the Alpine i509-WRA-JL, please visit us at bantamoverland.com. And as always, have a blast out there.